Hi there, I'm Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast. Welcome to this episode brought to you by our Allure Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Rupa Wong from drrupawong.com. That is DRRUPAWONG. We have a great conversation with Dr. Wong about designing your physician business and your social presence. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you will get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
We're very excited today. We have Dr. Rupa Wong in the house. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So Dr. Wong is actually one of our coaches. She has coached for us in our Allure Mastermind. She's a physician. She's a practice owner, mother of 3. She empowers women to redefine what having it all means. She has the podcast, It's Good to See You. She's also the owner of her page, Dr. Rupa Wong on Instagram, where she has tons of followers, and she posts about fashion, kids' vision, motherhood. She gives advice on recipes, medicine, lifestyle, fitness. You have so much fun posting. I love it. I love your Instagram, and I love the way that you've developed your businesses as a female entrepreneur, as a physician, and bringing good information and services to your patients or our communities. So welcome again. And I'd like to, before we get into the details of all your enterprises, I'd like to get back to the roots where it all started. Was it like a little girl who dreamed about becoming a doctor one day? How was that story for you?
Well, I come from a family of physicians, so it was actually kind of the path of least resistance. My mother is a physician. I have cousins, uncles, aunts, and so it's really what I knew. But that being said, my parents actually did not want me to enter medicine. And I think because my mother was a physician, she felt like it was a very difficult life, being a mom and a doctor. She couldn't get paid, other physicians to cover her practice. Back in those days, we didn't have cell phones, so we really couldn't go on vacation very much. So I think she saw the challenges of it. I think she enjoyed being a physician, but I think they worried that it was a very hard life. And so they actually wanted me to go into engineering, which I had no interest in, or something with computers or law. But medicine is just always what I wanted to do. I started doing internships when I was in high school, research, at Duke and at neighboring universities. So it's just it's in my blood.
So what type of physicians are your parents besides a good physicians, I guess, right?
Yeah. So actually, and this is always, I think this is where I think my father really shines. So my father is an electrical engineer and my mother is a physician. She's a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So it was always interesting. And I speak a lot about this on my social media because as women in medicine, it is typically that either both are in medicine or that the husband is the physician. So my dad was always very quick to correct people if they ever addressed him as doctor. And he would always just say, "Oh no, my wife's the smart one. She's the doctor." And he would always insist that they call her doctor. So that's the kind of example that I saw growing up in terms of some of the gender equity debates and discussions we're having now.
That's awesome. So you started with your rotations and, your interest very early, as you say, in high school. And then how was it that since, she was in pediatrics to some extent, so you're a pediatric ophthalmologist, correct? So how
Yes.
do you get into the ophthalmology instead of the psychiatry or some other inspiration that you might have had in the way?
So initially I was interested in psychiatry and my mom knew that was not the right fit for me, but she, of course, like any good mother and psychiatrist does, is she lets you figure it out for yourself. I knew going into medical school that I wanted to work with children. So I always knew that I would subspecialize either if it was medical or surgical. I wanted to work with kids. I've just been in love with kids since I was a kid myself, 12 or 13, babysitting. And getting through medical school, I did my psychiatry rotation and I loved it. I found it so interesting, but I like a very definite end to things. And the nebulous nature of it was just not suited for my personality. So she was correct in that respect. And then I really thought then I was going to go into a pediatric medical subspecialty, like, peds hem-onc or pediatric cardiology. And I didn't like general peds at all. So that really, I don't want to say I didn't like it. I loved working with the kids, but I could not envision doing a 3-year general peds residency. And I found that I really loved surgery. So I ended up trying to decide between ophthalmology and ENT. And I just liked peds ophtho. I thought was much cooler surgeries than peds ENT surgeries, which tends to be a lot of tubes. So, and, tonsils for the most part. And I thought that the most mundane aspect of pediatric ophthalmology for me was so extremely interesting. So here I am.
So I like that word that you said, nebulous, right? You said that about the psychiatry. I've never heard it described in such a way. And where we're choosing a specialty, is very important that we know our limits and the things that we like. And surgery was always, doing some type of surgery and having some type of speed to the end, looking at how patients change, but very quickly, was also something important to me. So I can certainly see that. So you became an ophthalmologist, but you were raised like North Carolina, right? And then East Coast. And now you are in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, yep.
Yeah. How did that plane take you there? How did you allow it to take you that far away?
I know. And my mother said, people are supposed to move where the wife's parents are from, not the opposite. But I make a lot of decisions. I'm very open and I make sometimes decisions. I weigh pros and cons, but ultimately I make my decisions with my gut. So my husband and I met in New York during residency. He's an ophthalmologist also. And then we were living in Boston for a couple of years. I was doing fellowship and I actually was on faculty at Boston Children's and Harvard while he was finishing his fellowship. And he really just could not live in that weather, the lack of sunlight. The sun sets at like 3:30 in the afternoon in Boston. So I knew that he was just going to have a hard time with this. So we started talking about options. And, I had my dream job at that point. I was living what I thought was the path I was supposed to be going after being chief resident and completing an academic fellowship. I had a faculty appointment. I was an instructor at Harvard Medical School. I was in charge of resident education at Boston Children's for the Department of Ophthalmology. I had all my boxes checked. But ultimately, I knew my husband just really could not be happy in Boston. So we thought about California. And I just thought, if we're going to move, I don't think that I'm going to find an academic center which suits my needs, because Boston Children's, I think, probably has the largest pediatric ophthalmology department in the country. So I just said, let's go for broke and do a total 180 and do private practice. And, we moved out to Hawaii. We didn't have a job in hand. Nobody was hiring. We called everybody. And so we, out of necessity, ended up practicing together because there was quite literally no other options. So that's how I became private practice owner, managing partner for my practice for almost 14 years now. And it has given me a direction in my life I would have never envisioned 20 years ago, but it has given me so much more flexibility than staying in an employed salaried position.
So transitioning from academics into private practice, you're now an entrepreneur just from the get-go. Which things you thought that were maybe, when we're in need, we just do what we have to do, right? Like there's no option. You want to practice, you want to feed your family. So there's no other plan to that opening your practice. But you were not taught business, correct? In all
Right.
this time, even though you were part of those programs and all these things, which things do you think helped you or didn't when you went to open your practice, besides the need of having to open your practice?
I think it was a couple of things. So my father has always had an entrepreneurial side. He was an electrical engineer, but he had his own satellite telecommunications company. So I think I learned a lot of it from him. And my chairman at Boston Children's really did involve us in terms of the coding and sitting in on the business meetings. So we were at least exposed, even as fellows, to the inner workings of the department. But I think the most important, it really was two things that just helped me with starting our practice. First is just the belief that we're smart. Any physician that has come this far and finished training is smart. Look how much, how many amazing things that we have done. So I felt confident that I could learn whatever it was that I needed to learn, whether or not I knew it at the time. And then the second is I asked for help constantly. And I still think that's one of the big things. When I don't know something, I'm going to ask someone and then take copious notes and create a system for it so that I can replicate it on my own. So if I didn't know how to reconcile my QuickBooks, I asked my accountant, hey, can you step me through what I'm supposed to do here? If the banker needed some papers from me and I didn't understand what that meant, I asked him to step me through it. So same with the biller. What does 30, 60, 90 really mean? What is AR? What should it be? If you surround yourself by people that are very good, they will want to see you succeed. It benefits them. It benefits my biller for me to succeed because she gets a percentage of collections. So I think being open and understanding that you can learn it and just asking those questions so that you can figure it out.
So you mentioned three very important things that we need as entrepreneur. One is the mindset, right? Knowing that you can do it. Number two, surrounding yourself with the right people, the right team. That's super important. And number three, asking. So you created your clinic and then that take you to different businesses. Besides having your clinic, you also have an optic shop, right?
Yep,
and then besides that, you have created an online presence and a podcast. So tell us about those other aspects. When did they come? Like you created your clinic, things are flowing. When do you introduce your optical shop, for example? Or was that always planned from the beginning?
So we actually took over the practice of a retiring physician. So it came with an optical shop, which honestly, if we had been starting from scratch, I would have been too overwhelmed to start an optical shop. We do glasses, contact lenses, everything. It would have felt too much, but because we took it over, again, I had no choice. And so we just sustained it. And so it was from the beginning. And, there's a lot that's really different because it's a little bit retail, but it's also working with insurance companies. And you don't just hire a sales associate, right? You need to have a certified optician. So there are all these nuances to running a successful optical and being able to have it thrive and serve your patients. So that was from the beginning. And then all of the other kinds of things that I do, that's honestly been within the last 3 or 4 years as I've started to let go of some of the reins that I would held on to so tightly and managing the practice as I started to outsource a lot more. And I'm really, really big into outsourcing. We can talk a lot about that, but I am a firm believer if you are not doing the $1,000 an hour types of decision-making and processes, then you are not serving your company well. And I was doing a lot. I was reconciling my own QuickBooks. I was doing all of these things that I should not have been doing. And it took me a really long time to let that go because I wanted to make sure I knew exactly how the business was running. But once I let those aspects go and really started to train my team to take over for me in a lot of these different respects, it freed up time for me to pursue these other types of projects like social media and online courses and my YouTube and my podcast and all of that.
So which one came first from those things?
So I started on Instagram first. Well, actually, I had a blog since I think it's probably been about 2010, 2011. I've had a blog since then because someone had recommended it just for SEO for the practice. And then I started social media in terms of the Instagram back in 2018. And that was mainly because I was looking on Instagram. I had a friend that was a dermatologist. She said, you could do this. She pulled up an account of one of my good friends now. She said, look, like she's giving out just health education, and I think you could be really successful in this. And as I was scrolling on Instagram, I was seeing all these celebrities. And I specifically remember there was a celebrity giving advice that you should feed your infant goat milk. I remember this very clearly. And I thought, this is ridiculous. This is very harmful, right? This is not what pediatricians recommend. And then I thought, well, how do people know if the people that are more established in their careers, right? Because I was over 40 by the time I was on Instagram. If we're not on these platforms, then people that are not physicians are relying on celebrities or, medical students or healthcare influencers. There's nothing wrong with medical students, but they're not yet in, really in the thick of it in terms of dispensing like health education. So I just thought, well, I need to put myself out there if I feel like there is misinformation there. And I started with the goal of wanting to just educate about strabismus, which is one of my surgeries that I do a lot of. That's misaligned eyes. And there's a lot of misinformation saying people are too old or that health insurance doesn't cover it, or you can only get this surgery when you're young, or, all sorts of things about that. So that's where I started. And as I started my Instagram, I started getting a lot of messages from young pre-meds and med students asking me, how did you move? How did you do this? How did you know you could start a practice? How did you succeed in medical school? And all of these, my family says I can't be a surgeon and a mom, and you have 3 kids. And so then it started to pivot because I was answering those types of questions. And that's where I started really talking a lot more about my personal life, about work-life balance and what it takes to be in this profession as a working mother. And then after the Instagram, I'd say probably then maybe about 2 years after is when I started YouTube, and TikTok was in the pandemic, just like everybody's TikTok was started. And and then the podcast is just coming up on 50 episodes. So just almost a year now for my podcast. So there you go.
That's great. So as the things that you're saying is basically, in your case, it was the passion first to teach people, to bring good information. And then one thing organically took you to another where you basically were giving information that you can give. One of the questions that we've had for some people who want to be like coaches online and entrepreneurs is their concern as physicians, because as a physician, you don't want to be saying or being perceived as you're giving medical advice. So how do you deal with that specifically in terms of how you deliver your information, and how, if you have any particular consents or agreements or disclosures in your social media?
So I have a disclosure on my Instagram. It just goes to my website, and I have a medical disclaimer there. And I think the key is you really have to position it as education and not medical advice, right? So medical advice is specific to a person. You are telling them what treatments to follow, what strategies to implement specific to them. And this is not, social media is not a doctor-patient relationship. So I do get a lot of messages, direct messages from people asking me to advise them. And I simply say, you need to find an ophthalmologist in your area. And I give them the website for a pediatric ophthalmologist or strabismus specialist so that they can find someone to help them in that way. So I think there's a lot of concern about this, but I think if you're just always cognizant that you are delivering education and not specific medical advice, it's not that difficult to be able to delineate between the two.
So let's talk about the specifics of your Instagram, because in your Instagram, as you say, like you have the medical stuff and you have the personal life stuff. And you say that you started like talking more about when you were receiving the questions, but you're also like doing fashion, you're posting wellness, you're posting recipes and things like that. How do you decide? Do you have like a routine that you follow? Like, this week I'm going to post so many of these, or it just depends when to do certain topics for the specific of building your Instagram presence and planning? How does that go?
So originally when I started, if you'd asked me this question maybe 2 years ago, I was much more intentional about content planning for Instagram, especially when I was in the initial stages of building the platform. So, Monday I tried to do an eye health. Tuesday I tried to do, pre-med advice. Wednesday I did, work-life balance. And I was kind of, a little bit more structured. I don't do that anymore. I just totally, Instagram for me is almost like a daily microblog. So for the most part, I am just posting what I'm feeling or what has, has affected me that day. There will be maybe some things that I try to make sure I get in. If it, like this past month, May is API Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So I have some thoughts of posts that I know I wanted to do, but sometimes things get pushed or, oh no, I got to post about Pinnacle or something like that. So I think it just depends on what works for you. If you have a team and you really are getting a lot of people to help with your social media, then I think really content planning is super helpful. And I do that for my podcasts and my YouTubes. I'm very specific about planning out that content just because it takes me longer to produce that content. Same with TikToks even. And I need specific days where I can batch that content. So I plan that out a lot more specifically, but Instagram, I no longer plan out as well as I used to. It's kind of more of what's happening for me in a day. So, and I I will look at my feed and I will make sure that it seems to touch on all the topics that I like to, and that it's not just specifically heavy in one, but I do try to distribute between eye health and work-life balance and, that kind of thing, and entrepreneurship. Those are kind of my three main buckets, and things will, I'll post stuff in my stories like fashion or recipes, but I don't typically post that in my feed. But I have highlights for them just because I know that that's what a lot of people enjoy. And I love it too. So that's just who I am. And I know that for certain people, that level of sharing feels extremely uncomfortable for them. And if it does, then that's fine. That doesn't have to be the way that you engage on these platforms. For me, that's part of who I am, and that's my personal brand, and it feels very comfortable for me. So everybody has to figure out what works for them.
So let's talk about your team, because you mentioned that you have your team, you're intentional with your podcast and you're intentional with your, to this extent of the programming, and you have a team for the podcast and you have a team right now for the YouTube. How many members you have of your team? Who does what? When did you decide to get a team?
So my team is probably a very small team. So I have one virtual assistant. And so she helps with the podcasts in terms of the guests. And I've created now Canva templates so she can help import things and create an outline so that I can share it on Instagram stories and we can share it with the guest. She helps coordinate the times for them, helps them, fill out the Google Forms, all of that. So that's my virtual assistant. Honestly, the boards, I use Trello. It's a project management software that I absolutely love. It's really more for me than for her, but it does help me make sure that we're both on the same page. Like, okay, today, Dr. Hamdani's podcast is going to go live. Let's just make sure we've got all our images. We can share that with her. All of that stuff. So that's for the podcast. She's really, actually, my virtual assistant is very, very helpful for my online courses and my online membership, much more so than my social media. She really helps me with a lot of that. And then for YouTube, I have a video editor in the Philippines. And so we just, they don't really do anything other than edit. So it's pretty much still me for that and creating the content and the ideas. But I would like to I have someone that I'm probably going to bring on board for the YouTubes and the TikToks, just in brainstorming, and help me stay a little bit more on top of that, because my YouTube will be the first one that I let go of because it is more time and labor intensive. So I haven't uploaded my video. I still need to edit 2 videos and upload them. And so I'm about 2 weeks behind. Usually I post every week. So, I think it's really important to have a good team and to learn to outsource early and to create those systems and processes so that you can spend your time doing the big stuff.
And then for the TikTok, you're basically doing that on your own. You don't have somebody to help you with those. You're also posting those on your own and processing them on your own.
Yeah. So like, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I have the editor that will just edit the videos. And podcasts, I do all my own editing and create, all my own ideas and brainstorming and everything. So for me, I like to keep really close to the content creation because I think at this point, just it's so niche that it's hard for someone else to come up with some of these ideas or what I feel passionately about too.
So we'll get to the coaching, to the courses in a second. How do you monetize if you do? How do you think this is helping you to have the Instagram, the TikTok, and the YouTube channels?
There's really 3 ways that you can monetize. My podcast is not monetized at all. YouTube, I forget if it's maybe 1,000 subscribers. I can't even remember when you become eligible for having ads. So ads is a small amount of income that can come to you once a month. Then I will do affiliate links on my YouTubes if I am talking about a product. And I'm very clear because I have a couple where I've done tutorials on the eye makeup health realm, just is a particular set of magnetic lashes safe or that kind of thing. And I always try things out first. And if I like them, I make the video first. And then I send the video to the brand because I don't want to do a sponsored video. I don't think it feels authentic. I think it's harder than for my viewers to trust whether I truly believe in this product or think it's safe. So there are a bunch of things I have tried and I don't like them. And so I'll still post them, but then I don't obviously do affiliate links for them. It's like, I don't like this contact lens. This colored contact lens is not safe for your eyes. So I'm not posting an affiliate link to that. But the ones that I do like, I just send them the video and they all will send me, here's, a little link for 10% commission or 15% commission. Again, it's not a ton of money, but it's money when I'm sleeping. So I've already created the content. So this is just extra revenue. And you can become I'm an Amazon partner, so you can do little Amazon affiliate links as well. And then the third way is of collaborating. I think once you've built your platforms a little bit is with partnerships. And I'm very, very, very choosy when it comes to partnerships. I will probably do maybe about 4 or 5 a year at the most, just because I think, again, it degrades the authenticity of your posts. And it has to really fulfill some very narrow criteria for me. It has to be very mission aligned for me. And it has to be very on brand for me. So I'm not going to promote some kind of skinny tea or some, odd supplement. So I really want it to be within my space. And that takes, a lot to get to that point. So I have done some partnerships and collaborations with companies that I believe in and products that I really like that usually I would be promoting anyway, because I think it's cool. So then it works out. And that eventually can sometimes lead to advisory board positions, those sort of things too, which also, sometimes can have additional revenue as well.
So if I have Instagram and I'm up to like 50,000 followers and I'm so happy, everything's okay, these relationships, usually who do you write to in that company?
Oh, to ask them for a partnership or collaboration. To be honest, I've never reached out on my own. Usually they reach out to me and I either say yes or no. So because I have the verified check mark on Instagram, I would probably start out by just doing a direct message to their Instagram account, because I think just because I have the blue check, it's a little bit easier to get noticed. Or usually if you go to their website, they'll have a specific section for partnerships and collaborations, and you can just send an email to that specific one. But I've never, actually, it's not true. I've reached out one time. I use this really cool, we use this app at home to turn off our children's Wi-Fi. We can control each of their devices individually. And I just think it's a really neat app. And so I reached out to them because I'm always talking about screen time as a pediatric ophthalmologist. So I did reach out to them, but I never heard back.
Well, that's great. So that's how you do it, really. Before we go on, I do want to ask about specific like cameras and things like that you're using, specific lights and specific cameras that you're using for recording these videos.
Honestly, I think my biggest advice is just to start. You don't need to invest in a lot of equipment. My still most popular YouTube video with over 500,000 views is one that I recorded just spur of the moment on my phone with a $13 Gorilla, stand from Amazon. And that's it, just with my iPhone. And then I edited myself in iMovie. So I was doing all my own editing just in iMovie. And I still do a lot of editing on just iMovie. I cannot teach myself the Adobe. It's just, I don't have the bandwidth for that. But you don't need, the iPhones are really awesome. So you really don't need anything past that to begin, at least for Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. That's all you really need to start with. And then once you get a little bit more, you want something a little fancier. I had my husband do the research because he's really techie. And so I just have a Canon, I think it's a Canon M50. It's a DSLR. And I love it. It's now maybe 3 years now since I've had this camera, and it's great. And so that's what I use for filming my YouTubes now. But you really don't need a ton of stuff. And then I just I'm in Hawaii, so I have a lot of natural light. So I just film where I've got great natural light. Typically, when I do it all upstairs in my bedroom, typically either one or two of different angles. And that's what I'm using. I have for my TikToks, the $100 ring light on Amazon that everybody has. So I have that just more for this being a stand than actually using the ring light. I don't love the artificial light nature of it. And because I have natural light, I try to just get all my stuff filmed during the day.
So today we've been talking about how to have these different sources of social media, monetize some specific tips, and then you have these courses online and a membership. Tell us about the process for that specifically, how you've been, technically able to do that so that it's available for your clients.
So I think I developed my conference or Pinnacle conference and my online membership and courses. I did it a little bit backwards. I think a lot of people will develop the courses and then decide and recognize the need to have a social media presence. And mine actually grew, like you said earlier, very organically from the types of questions I was getting from social media. And I thought, well, there's a need here to teach women the business side and leadership and all of this side of medicine. And so the, Pinnacle Conference was born. And, there's a need for pre-meds to understand and to collaborate with one another and to get mentorship from senior doctors. And that's where my membership attending lounge was created. So these things just arose from the questions that I kept getting over and over. And in terms of the nitty gritty, so I just will I love video, so I'm very comfortable on camera. So I will just record everything on that same Canon that I use for my YouTubes and then send it to the video editor, and they just help me edit it. I create all the slides that they then intersperse throughout. And some people will do courses where it's just kind of a screen recording going through the presentation, which is great too. I've done a lot of courses like that. I have a very short attention span, so I try to create videos the way that I need to use to be able to watch them, which is talking head style, interspersed with some slides, each video no longer than 10 minutes. My brain just can't go further than that. So I have that same video editor do that. I have my virtual assistant. I will usually write everything up in a Google Doc and she will convert it. Once I made the first couple workbooks, then she's now able to use that as a template and then takes my Google Doc and converts it into a fillable PDF workbook for each of the modules that go along with the membership. So in the beginning, it was a lot of work. And then now as I've set up those systems, it's a lot easier to be able to implement those things.
So in terms of the courses, what platform are you using to have your membership? And then how does that work for the mechanics of that? If I want to do courses online, how do I plug them in, and how do I put that for the membership?
So I use two different things. So I use Searchy, which is Stu McLaren's platform for the memberships. I just liked the way that it'll kind of put you on the specific path based on where you are. And I have linked it with a quiz. So everybody that comes into my online membership takes a quiz, and it'll tell them which stage they're at. In the beginning stages, envision, or are they at the end stages, empower. And once they're linked, then it tags them, and then they have access to the membership and what they see. And they can always access everything, but I have grouped and tagged things in there according to the different levels that they're at. So this is next month is going to be switching from being a monthly online membership to a very, very low cost course, because I have now 24 months worth of content in terms of videos and interviews with attending physicians, mindset videos, workbooks, and then live Q&As. So I'll be switching it to more of an online course type format and switching the attending lounge, calling it Learner's Lounge, so that the attending lounge will become the Dr. Mom membership, which is what that's going to be the goal. And then for the course, the virtual assistant course, I do that through Kajabi. So I use Zaps I use the Try Interact for the quizzes, which is great. I actually use it for my practice for nearsightedness. If parents want to know if their child is at risk for nearsightedness, I actually have a quiz for that as well. I love quizzes. I think quizzes are so awesome. And so Searchy for the membership and Kajabi for the course.
That's really great. You've given us tons and tons and tons of information, which is tons and tons and tons of work for you, which most of us cannot understand. How do you do tons and tons and tons of work in this way? And we really appreciate all you do for our community, for our patients, and for ourselves as physicians and as women. We're going to have the bonus there about Pinnacle in a second. Before we get to that, can you tell us 3 specific business tips that you would give for our listeners right now based on our conversation today?
3 business tips. First one is to outsource. I'm a big believer in outsourcing. That's why I have virtual assistants. We have medical virtual assistants for my office. I have virtual assistants, all around me that are surrounding and helping, so that it doesn't even have to be virtual. It can just be home assistants, right? If you don't like doing your laundry, and this is something we talked about in our conference 2 weeks ago at Pinnacle, a lot of people were talking about having some extra help in the house to be able to do the laundry or the cooking or whatever it is that doesn't really give you joy. And afterwards, someone came up and said, you need to really be a lot more cognizant to us in general, as the founders, of people's income statuses, because not everybody can afford to have someone do the laundry. And I think that's actually a big myth and fallacy, because for the most part, as professional working women, that I think your podcast is who it caters to, we make more than $15 or $20 an hour, which means that you can pay someone $15 or $20 an hour to fold your laundry, which is what I do. I like to do the laundry. I don't like to fold the laundry. So I have help for folding laundry. So outsourcing and letting go of the things that do not either bring you joy or are not in your zone of genius, as Michael Hyatt would say, that's where you need to go. Your desire zone. Second, I think it's just, we talked about this before in that same vein, is just really having the mindset that you can do it. And I'm not someone that believes if you speak something into existence, it'll happen and you'll manifest it. I mean, I understand where that's coming from, but I really think there's a lot of preparation that's required. And I think sometimes having that kind of very cursory look at things can make it seem as if it's very easy. But I do think you have to have the mindset that you're capable. Just at the bottom line, you're capable. You might not know everything you need to know now, but you are capable of figuring it out. And then the third is just to be always reassessing and analyzing what is it that is bringing the most value to your business, and spend the time doing those things. Follow that 80-20 Pareto's principle rule. That's really, really key, because you could be doing something. And I don't think that you should do something and then just say, hey, that's not working out. Give it a month, give it 3 months, decide what that time frame is from the beginning, and then reevaluate it 3 months. Like, all right, you know what? I've been trying to do Pinterest for 3 months now. I don't really see it increasing my blog traffic. I don't really see it increasing my email list. So this might be something that we need to let go of and is not going to be a good use of my time. So I think just reassessing that and always making sure that you are doing the things that are driving your business forward. And that's it.
Those are awesome, dead on, recommendations and tips for our listeners. It's like whenever you give a medical treatment, you always want to know that it's working. So the same thing should apply for your business, but you have to give it time to work, but don't give it like so much that you're losing your time, right?
Exactly. Time. You don't check a cholesterol after like 2 days of being on Lipitor, right? You got to give it your month.
Exactly. Same thing. So let's talk about our bonus is Pinnacle. I'm very excited about what you're doing with Pinnacle. Tell us a little bit about Pinnacle, what it is, how it helps others. And the last 3 years, with pre-COVID, post-COVID, tell us about the events of Pinnacle.
So Pinnacle is one of the things that I'm most proud of. It started as a brainchild. It was a conversation that I was having when my brother was visiting me during Thanksgiving 4 years ago. And so it's like, what would you really want to do? And I said, I'd love to start a conference for women to teach them all the things that I never knew, 15 or 20 years ago. And he said, well, what's stopping you? I was like, the magnitude of it. It's huge. And it would have stayed just an idea until I met my 3 co-founders for the conference, Dr. Natalie Crawford, Dr. Pam Mehta, and Dr. Danielle Jones, who most people know as Mama Dr. Jones on all of her social media platforms. And the 4 of us have created, I think, something really special, where it is a community for empowering other women in medicine to truly achieve the pinnacle of their professional and personal lives. But it's not just a wellness or work-life balance type conference. I mean, we have really meaty topics and amazing speakers discussing things like leadership and contract negotiation and all of those things that are not the academic part of practicing medicine. So we had our first in-person conference in December 2019. And then we actually had planned 2 conferences for 2020. We had one planned here in Hawaii in June. And then we had the annual one. So both got canceled. We shifted to a virtual conference, which went really well. And then did an online membership for a year, which was really amazing. And through that, we saw how much people really want this community. I mean, more than anything. There were some, we just called them happy hours. We did things 6 times a month. And one of the events would just be a happy hour. You read a podcast, we would recommend a certain article. And people just liked getting on Zooms and connecting with each other and just talking with each other. And then we finally returned to in-person just 2 weeks ago, where we had our second live event. And it really was amazing, because I personally never attended a conference where I have felt the need to thank the founders for putting it on. And the number of people that came up to us to thank us for creating the community and for creating the conference and tackling these topics, it was really just mind-blowing. And it really, truly is the thing that I am most proud of, aside from serving my patients and, but of my entrepreneurial side gigs, this is the one that I think has the biggest reach. And so we are actually taking registration. Today's the last day. So by the time your listeners hear it, we are still taking registration for May of 2023.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you for being here. You're like just this wealth of knowledge and power. You're a powerful person, with powerhouse with all these things that you're doing. And they are just so amazing. And they're really well received because there's the love, the passion, the interest, and it's really good products that you're putting out. So thank you for them. So if our listeners want to find you, which you're like everywhere, let's go one by one. Let's go by your website, your TikTok, your Instagram, your Pinnacle.
It's all pretty easy because I do believe in the power of branding. So everything, for the most part, you can find me at Dr. Rupa Wong. So DrRupawong. So drrupawong.com is my website. I have the same handle, Dr. Rupa Wong, for Instagram, for TikTok, and for YouTube. My podcast is called It's Good to See You, but you could just search my name and you should probably be able to find it. And the only place where I have a different name is on Facebook, where it's Rupa Wong MD, because somebody took Dr. Rupa Wong. I don't know who that is, but they took it. So I am Rupa Wong MD on Facebook. Well, and LinkedIn, you can find me there too.
She's everywhere, guys. She's everywhere. And you can reach out and she will be happy to answer questions and see you through her different resources. So thank you for being here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Well, guys, that's it for today. Stay tuned for more of our Design Your Physician Life podcast, which was brought to you today by our Allure Mastermind, an exclusive mastermind for physician entrepreneurs. To reach Dr. Rupa Wong, please visit her website, drrupawong.com. DrRupawong. We will continue to bring you useful resources to develop your physician entrepreneur life, like we did today with Dr. Rupa Wong, and much more. Thank you for joining us in our podcast today. Remember to like it, subscribe to us, and share it with your friends and family. And also remember to join our Allure Mastermind, where we achieve transformations through entrepreneurship. Our website is maxallure.com, maxallure.com. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye.
Please remember that Design is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.